There's this thing some people do. They'll be sitting in a room, completely still, and you can just feel it. Something's off. Not bad off, just different. They're not relaxed, even when they should be. I remember watching my friend Sarah at a beach vacation once. Everyone else was half asleep in their chairs, drinks in hand, music playing, and she was alert, scanning, like she was waiting for something to go wrong. When I asked her about it later, she laughed it off. I don't know how to do nothing, she said, but it wasn't a joke. It was the truth. You've probably met someone like this. Maybe you are someone like this. The person who seems older than they are, who handles crisis better than they handle peace, who can manage everyone else's breakdown but completely falls apart when someone asks, "Hey, are you okay?" At first glance, people call it maturity, responsibility. Wow, they really have their life together. But if you look closer, really look, you'll see something else. A tightness. A constant readying. A body that learned a long time ago that letting your guard down meant things fell apart. This isn't about being type A or anxious or whatever label we throw around these days. This is about something that happened in childhood. Something that changed the wiring. These are people who became adults before they stopped being kids. And I don't mean it in that annoying old soul way people say at parties. I mean their brain literally had to develop survival skills that weren't supposed to come online yet. Because when you're 7 and you're checking if your mom's okay after another crying episode, when you're 9 and calculating if there's enough money for groceries, when you're 11 and you're the one putting your drunk dad to bed, your childhood doesn't just end. It gets overwritten. And once that happens, you can't just go back. You can't unhear what you heard. You can't unknow what you know. You can't unbecome the person who holds everything together. People who grew up too fast exist in this weird in-between space. They're not quite kids when they should be kids. They're not quite adults when they become adults. They're just neither. Or both, depending on the day. I'm thinking of Amir, a guy I knew in college, 20 years old, working 2 jobs, sending money home, managing his younger siblings' school schedules from another city, while the rest of us were figuring out our majors and complaining about cafeteria food. One time someone asked him to come to a party. He looked genuinely confused. "I have to call home at 9, he said. Not as an excuse, as a fact. At 9 p.m., he called home every single night. To make sure everyone was okay, homework was done, dinner happened. Nobody forced him. Nobody asked him to. He just did it. Because in his house, if he didn't, nobody would. That's the thing about growing up too fast. It's not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. You just slowly become the person everyone depends on. And by the time you realize it's happening, it's already happened. You're the one who knows where the important papers are. You're the one who can talk your mom down when she's spiraling. You're the one who learned how to read the room before entering it, how to gauge your dad's mood by the sound of his footsteps, how to make yourself small when big emotions took up all the oxygen. And all of this happens while you're still supposed to be learning multiplication tables and how to make friends and what flavor ice cream you like. But instead, you're learning how to be quiet when you need to be loud, how to be strong when you need to be held, how to solve problems that aren't yours to solve. Your childhood doesn't have a chance. It just gets skipped. Here's what messes me up about this whole thing. When a kid grows up in chaos, and I mean real chaos, not my parents where strict chaos, their brain does something incredible and terrible at the same time. It adapts. A child's brain is supposed to learn from adults. It's supposed to watch a parent regulate their emotions and think, oh, that's how you handle stress. That's how you deal with disappointment. That's what safety feels like. But when the adults can't regulate, when they're the ones falling apart, the kid's brain goes, okay, I guess I'll figure this out myself then. And it does. Somehow. It figures it out. But the cost? The cost is that relaxation becomes dangerous. Think about it. If you grew up in a house where calm meant the storm is coming, where quiet meant something's brewing, where everything seemed fine until suddenly it wasn't, your body learns that peace is a lie. So even decades later, when you're safe, when the crisis is over, when you're an adult with your own space and your own life, your body doesn't believe it. It's still waiting, still watching, still ready. I have this cousin, Zara. Successful, stable job, great apartment, but she can't sleep without checking the locks 3 times. Can't go on vacation without a backup plan for the backup plan. Can't let anyone else drive because what if something happens and I'm not in control? She knows it's irrational. She knows objectively she's safe. But knowing doesn't change what her nervous system learned at 8 years old when her dad lost his job and her mom had a breakdown and she had to be the one keeping it together. You know what else these people lose? Boredom. Most kids get bored, right? Summer afternoons with nothing to do. Staring at the ceiling. Complaining I'm bored until a parent suggests something. But for kids who grew up too fast, boredom was terrifying. Because boredom meant nobody was managing things. Boredom meant the adults had checked out. Boredom meant things could spiral and nobody would notice until it was too late. So they filled the space. They found things to do. They stayed busy. They became useful. My therapist once told me something that hit different. She said, people who grow up in unstable homes don't learn to rest. They learn to wait for the next disaster. And man, yeah, that's it exactly. As an adult, this looks like never taking a full day off, always having a project, feeling guilty for watching TV, needing to be productive even on vacation, the idea of doing nothing, feeling physically uncomfortable. Because doing nothing meant things fell apart. Every single time. The teenage years are when it really shows. When other kids are worried about who likes who and what to wear to homecoming, these kids are worried about actual adult things. Layla was one of these kids. I met her years later, but she told me stories. At 16, she was managing her mom's medication schedule. At 17, she was signing her own permission slips because her dad was too drunk to remember. At 18, she had a full-time job while finishing high school because someone had to pay rent. Teachers loved her. So mature, so responsible, such a good head on her shoulders. But nobody asked about the cost. Nobody asked what she was giving up. Nobody asked if maybe, just maybe, she wanted to be irresponsible for once. To make bad decisions, to be a stupid teenager doing stupid teenager things. She couldn't. She had a mom who needed her, bills that needed paying, siblings who needed raising. So she did it. She held it all. And she made it look easy. That's the trick, isn't it? They make it look easy. So people assume it is easy. People assume they're just naturally capable or naturally mature or naturally together. But inside, they're exhausted. They're fragmenting. They're holding so much that their hands are shaking, but they learn to hide the shake. They learn to perform fine while managing catastrophe. They learn to smile while screaming internally. They learn that showing struggle meant adding burden, and there was already too much burden to go around. So they became experts at the split. The outer competence, the inner chaos, and the gap between the two got so practiced that even they stopped noticing it was there. Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. These people, the ones who grew up too fast, they're incredibly good in crisis. Like weirdly good. When everyone else is panicking, they're calm. When everything's falling apart, they know exactly what to do. They can handle chaos with this eerie level of competence. But put them in peace, they fall apart. A quiet Sunday afternoon feels wrong. A vacation with nothing scheduled makes them anxious. Someone saying I'll handle it makes them suspicious. I saw this with my coworker David. There was this massive work crisis once systems down, clients angry, everything on fire. And David? Cool as ice. Delegating, problem solving, keeping everyone calm. Absolute professional. Then a few weeks later, his boss gave him a week off. Mandatory. You've been working too hard. Take a break. He had a panic attack on day 2. Not because anything bad happened, but because nothing bad happened. Because his brain literally didn't know what to do with calm. Because for 34 years, his value was tied to crisis management. And without a crisis to manage, who was he? This is the paradox nobody warns you about. You get really, really good at functioning under pressure. So good that normal life feels alien. Rest feels like laziness. Calm feels like denial. Someone helping feels like they're pitying you or setting you up for disappointment. Because every time you trusted calm before, chaos followed. Every time you accepted help before, it disappeared when you needed it most. Every time you let your guard down before, everything fell apart. So you stopped trusting it. You stopped trying. You stayed ready. And ready became your baseline. Not peace. Ready. Relationships are complicated for these people. Not because they don't want connection, but because they don't know how to receive it. When you spend your whole childhood being the caretaker, being taken care of feels backwards. Almost shameful. They're the friend everyone calls at 2 a.m. The one who always has advice. The one who can solve your problem while managing 3 of their own. They're incredible at giving support, but accepting it, they'd rather chew glass. My friend Priya is like this. She will show up for you always. Your car breaks down? She's there. Bad breakup? She's bringing ice cream. Family drama? She's got you. But the one time she called me crying, she apologized 17 times. I'm sorry for bothering you. I'm sorry I'm being dramatic. I'm sorry I know you're busy. I was like, Priya, you've listened to me cry about my ex for literally 6 months. Stop apologizing. But she couldn't. Because somewhere in her wiring, needing help meant being weak. And being weak meant being a burden. And being a burden meant being left. So she stays strong. She stays helpful. She stays needed. And underneath all of that, she's drowning. But nobody sees it because she's so damn good at hiding it. This is the thing about people who grew up too fast, they become black belts at deflection. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. I've got it handled, even when they absolutely do not have it handled. Not because they're being difficult, but because accepting help requires vulnerability. And vulnerability requires trust. And trust requires believing someone will show up and stay. And based on their childhood, that's not a belief they have. Let's talk about adaptability for a second. Everyone loves adaptability, right? Oh, they're so flexible, so easygoing. They can handle anything. And yeah, people who grew up too fast are incredibly adaptable. They can adjust to any situation. They can read a room instantly and shift accordingly. They can survive almost anything. But here's what nobody mentions. That adaptability came from having to ignore yourself constantly. You learn to accommodate everyone else's emotional state while suppressing your own. You learn to gauge the room to stay safe while never expressing what you actually feel. You learn that your needs are always secondary to keeping the peace. So you become an adult who can tell anyone what they need. But if someone asks what you need, blank stare. Not because you're being difficult, but because that question was never safe to answer. Your needs didn't matter when survival was on the line. Your needs got in the way. Your needs made things harder. So you learned to not have them, or at least to not voice them. People look at you and think, wow, they're so low maintenance, so chill, never complains. But low maintenance isn't a personality trait, it's a survival skill. You learn to need less because needing more wasn't an option. And yeah, maybe it looks like strength. Maybe it is strength. But it's also grief. Grief for the version of you who could have asked for things, who could have been high maintenance or demanding or needy without the world falling apart. But that version never got to exist because the situation didn't allow it. There's this loneliness that comes with all of this that's hard to explain. You feel out of sync with everyone, too serious as a kid, too tired as an adult, never quite matching the energy of your peers. While other 8-year-olds were trading Pokemon cards, you were worried about your mom's mental health. While other 16-year-olds were sneaking out to parties, you were making sure bills got paid. While other 25-year-olds were figuring out their careers, you were already burnt out from a decade of emotional labor. You exist on a different timeline, and that creates distance. How do you explain to your college friends that you can't relate to their crazy family drama because your version of family drama was actual trauma? How do you tell your coworkers that you feel 40 inside, even though you're 28? How do you describe carrying exhaustion that doesn't match your years? Most people don't get it. So you stop trying to explain. You just exist quietly in your difference. You find the other people who understand without words, the ones who also grew up too fast, who also carry that invisible weight, who also struggle with rest and trust and letting go. And with them, you don't have to explain. They just know. But with everyone else, there's this gap, this sense of, I'm different and I don't know how to bridge it. Not because you're better, not because you're worse, just because your childhood asked you to skip steps that everyone else got to take. And you can't go back and take them now. So you move forward, carrying what you carry, adapting like you always have, making it look easier than it is. Because that's what you learned. That's what you do. Even when it's heavy. Even when you're tired. Even when you wish, just once, someone else would hold it. You keep holding it. Because letting go never felt safe. Look, I'm not saying any of this to make it sound tragic or to paint these people as victims, because that's not what this is. This is about understanding, about recognition, about naming something that often goes unnamed. People who grew up too fast aren't broken. They're adapted. And that adaptation came with costs, yes, but it also came with capabilities that most people never develop. They can handle crisis. They can read people. They can survive things that would break others. They have emotional intelligence that's off the charts. They're reliable, capable, strong, but that strength was built on a foundation of having no other choice. And it's exhausting to maintain. So if you're reading this and you see yourself, I need you to hear this. You don't need to fix yourself. You're not behind. You're not doing it wrong. You're not broken because you can't relax the way other people relax. You're not weak because accepting help feels impossible. You're not failing because rest feels unsafe. Your nervous system isn't being difficult. It's being loyal. It's doing exactly what it learned to do to keep you alive. And for a long time, that vigilance worked. It kept things from falling apart. It kept you safe. You don't need to force yourself to just let go. You don't need to apologize for needing control. You don't need to be ashamed of the ways you learned to survive. What you might need is permission. Permission to rest, even if it feels wrong. Permission to ask for help, even if it's terrifying. Permission to be imperfect, needy, messy, all the things you never got to be as a kid. You deserved adults who could hold you. You deserved a childhood where you didn't have to be strong. You deserved to be a kid without also being a solution. You didn't get that. And that's not your fault. But you're here now. And you're still holding it all. And maybe it's time someone held you instead. If this video helped you recognize yourself or someone you care about, you're not alone here. This is what this channel is for. Understanding the quiet psychological stuff that shapes us, the patterns we carry, the weights we hold. If this meant something to you, subscribe so you catch the next one. And if you want, drop a comment. Share your story. Sometimes just naming it out loud helps. Thanks for being here.